Here we are now at 1965's Redbeard. This one will be underwhelming. Please do unsubscribe in advance. We're bored of formalism or any shoulds here at AOD. So ought all of you. But that's a wider issue. Let's fry one fishy at a time here. Redbeard has been cited as one of Kurosawa's best films. I'm already in trouble, apparently. I remember when I first watched the film, I'm assuming I was 18 or 19, I considered it quite overlong, and with a narrative that wasn't far removed enough from certain Hollywood schmaltz, which often disgusted, but more importantly, bored me ferociously. Really, I wasn't in the mood to watch the film, I was just viewing it out of obligation, and was put off by a 3 hour drama with vaguely repetitious imagery and annoyingly identifiable instances of insistently emotive dramatic crescendos. It is as though Kurosawa believed so righteously in certain narrative moments that you almost hear some bullhorn amplified voice crying, "Okay, this is the dramatic moment, people. We can all get together and bond together over how this moment, now feeling for it, demonstrates our shot, vacuous humanity. Don't you just love agreeing with people and feeling like you're a part of something?" Eerily, it is almost as though Kurosawa knew that his cultural reverence would persist into the internet epoch, and so in the overbearing era of anthro-rodent millennials and or Gen Z, pitifully larping his impassioned sentimental cinephile locusts, all via that accursed internet machine, the film Redbeard, would lend itself to younger pest twits, simply deciding that the film was moving just because they wanted to feel like they were a part of something, some vapid film fan community where we all cry and jerk each other off over how loyal and dedicated we are to this medium, and I sometimes hate you all for that. That sentimental self-importance that defined James Rolfe and Doug Walker, among some other mentally ill net-based hack film critics, suggests that it was a phenomenon prior to the internet before the 2000s, although the internet and the popularity of figures such as those ones just exemplified that mimetic archetype, the insufferable bandwagon-chasing little vermin, either too invested in miming the actions of others, or so insular and self-centered as to believe they're the first person to have valid, untarnished critical assessment of the film medium entirely. As I was at one time. Noel Oakeshott too. Man, 2015 was a battleground when we met at the University of Sydney. Guess which one of us was the deferring dropout? This film has been compared to Kurosawa's earlier feature, Akira, and whilst I would claim Redbeard is still far superior to Akira, it suffers from a very sadly similar issue. That is, those inferred dramatic highs which really strip away the seams of a clandestinely contrived film screenplay. In a comment I received on my upload for Kurosawa's Yojimbo, my magnificent commenter Barry Moore, who this channel is sincerely unworthy of, Moore mentioned in passing that he wasn't a major fan of Kurosawa's, which is the first time I'd ever read that claim, or one that wasn't translated from a mid-20th century bitter Japanese film critic, and had me a bit surprised for a brief moment. Moore is highly articulate, has me seriously considering alternative viewpoints, even if I can't bring myself to be genuinely persuaded. But considering these are matters of preference, it isn't a real bother for anyone. Interestingly, their lack of fondness for Hitchcock's Psycho spun me more than his vague apathy to Wells' Citizen Kane, but that's my priorities showing themselves. Anything Moore opines, I find myself in complete understanding of it. And so it only took a few moments of thinking about why someone might feel a touch underwhelmed by Kurosawa when I wholly realised a lot of these films are filled with loud, dramatic contrivances. I've been claiming this about Akira for some years now, and Redbeard I eventually came around to liking more so once I had no expectations for what it may be. Viewing it a second time knowing what to expect, I found the film even thoroughly gratifying, yet it is easy to imagine certain hypothetical criticisms focused on the areas wherein Redbeard too closely resembles a certain Hollywood or Hollywood-inspired psychodramatic trite. Now, of course, Redbeard contains masterly photography, at least one incredibly memorable performance, some quite good moments of dialogue, and some potent affecting existentialism at its best moments. It also drags for up to 15-20 minutes at a time before reliably picking up again. Features a fight scene which, whilst rather well choreographed, features the kind of sound effects we might later expect in a Jackie Chan sequence played for laughs as much as thrills. And has you thinking of the Kurosawa films you enjoyed more, at least prior to this one? I'm in big trouble. And as I would claim about the colour era of Kurosawa generally, released afterward, and displaying far more filmic, dramatic, and otherwise seamless execution than most of all of his black and white films. Yes, I can be a slight heretic when it comes to the big AK-47 too, although it is rooted in a very profound reverence. Next time, I'll be elaborating on that. If Kala Kurosawa was a separate filmmaker, I would prefer that filmmaker, and claim that this auteur took Kurosawa to places that he himself was never seemingly able. Now, obviously, fortunately, Kurosawa was this auteur, and in the colour era with improved screenplays, the finest colour photography of the celluloid era was on display much of the time. I'll put AK's colour work up against anyone's during the celluloid century. Kubrick, Fassbinder, Almodovar, Cirque. What a dismal competitor he is. Let's all realise this if we're actually able. If Kurosawa's career had closed with Redbeard, I wouldn't have nearly as much reverence for him as I do when you supplement his black and white oeuvre with the subsequent exercises in colour cinematography. I'm not entirely interested in the dull fetishization of black and white photography. There is a reactionary odour about it, truthfully, and as good as Kurosawa's black and white films remained, the reasons for his colour output being comparatively underseen are generally confusing to me. If one doesn't care for the scripts, I suppose so be it. But where around the world were you finding comparably impressive acts of sheer cinematography and filmic staging? And if one tries to smugly name, say, 4 examples, it's like, really? You find a cause to dampen these films' achievements because of fucking 4 individuals? Like, oh hey, he's only the 5th best worldwide? Whenever there are citations of mainstream cinema going downhill, I ask, when was mainstream cinema so marvellous? And I'm given like 3 examples over 2 or 3 decades, and it's like, wait, by that logic, wasn't mainstream cinema always kind of crummy? By that logic of mainstream cinema having gone utterly downhill, there must have been dozens of classics a year, but people tend to list like 3 to 4 examples of why things are better in the past. Gen X is really bad with this, by the way, just so you know, guys. I think people have a really skewed perspective of the times before they were born and had a more optimistic perception of the world when they were under, say, 20. And so every decade is an Arcadia if you were born late enough. We need to understand this cognitive blind spot someday. It's surely time we do so. Eventually, maybe, possibly. That annoying Gen X. Oh, Inception isn't as good as Total Recall. No action-adventure space opera is better than the original Star Wars films. No CGI exercise is superior to Tron. To be fair, maybe not many are. No monster movie is better than certain 80s films, American Werewolf, Return of Godzilla, Gremlins, Aliens, The Thing, The Fly, oh, practical effects, blah, blah, blah. I agree, but, like, you donate to the production using practical effects. If you were going to try to bash me up for employing CGI instead of practical effects on some genre piece, it's like, you front the money for it. You hire the next Rick Baker. It's like, get real. Like, I wish we could all afford to have old school practical body horror effects. Seriously, what choice do you filmmakers have? It's like, isn't like writing a book where you can just list whatever you want in your plot. We have to execute this stuff within an animated medium. Live action is an essential compromise anyway, and it has some aesthetic distinctiveness compared to animated entirely forms. Films looking like they take place outside, only achievable via live action photography or generally. So to those upset with computer graphics in lieu of practical effects for modern genre cinema, I really do sympathise, but it's like, what do you expect us to do? Go broke because some Gen Xers from 2000's IMDb are cranky and claim to be willing to pay a ticket price or buy a DVD, Blu-ray, given the box office returns, just DVD, and maybe a streaming service offer, when they get the chance? Nah, I don't trust you. You're all as broke as the millennials are, with a decade or 2 on them. And better taste in music, but that's not difficult really. So that's Redbeard and a bunch of other bullshit. If this isn't proper or professional or careful enough for you, that's not the point of this channel. This channel is for me. I've never told anyone to subscribe. People subscribed anyway. That's on you guys. But if you enjoy these videos, that does rather warm my heart, perhaps incidentally, because any enjoyment or admiration you feel for these uploads is incidental, as opposed to Kurosawa's films so pointed towards a laudatory reception, or so he aspires. And they are, so I guess AK1 in the long run, less so in his lifetime. We'll discuss this more so next video, actually. To the point where a couple of them, AK's films, vaguely annoy me. Redbeard is one of those, to some extent anyhow, but its merits have me really championing the film overall. I'd be dishonest to suggest I'm not in envy of many of its achievements. Any flaws I find are pretty ignorable in the grand schema. And even if it is too Hollywood in some aspects, it outdoes Hollywood for the very, very most part, so maybe it isn't worth complaining all that much, possibly.